Runners Unfiltered is back, and I'm excited that we're going to be on a new platform, which is YouTube. Yes, we're going to have some fun on YouTube. Obviously, we're going to have podcasts going out in the usual podcast listening platforms that they went out in the past, but we're going to primarily do things on YouTube from here on out. So I'm really excited about that. What that means is a couple things. For one, the content will be available here on YouTube first. So it'll be great if you guys can subscribe to the channel. And another reason is I'm going to switch the format of the podcast itself, especially for game recaps. Obviously, I'm going to do some pre-recorded videos and some pre-recorded stuff throughout the season. But for post-game reactions and just reactions in general, that initial podcast that we generally do, that we release normally midweek, I'm going to do a basically instant reaction live chat, and that is going to be put out on listening platforms as a podcast, but that's going to be the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be doing this year in terms of the content plan. So what I'm going to need from you guys is to subscribe to the channel. That's going to be the most important part, so you guys can be notified when I do go live. What this will mean is I'm going to be interacting with your comments and your questions about the game and your thoughts about the game, and I'm going to answer any questions that you guys have live while doing the podcast. So what that'll look like is the next day, probably going to mostly be on Sundays, I'm going to go live. I'm probably going to have a list of questions already and a list of topics that I'm going to hit. And then as we go through the podcast, and live questions come through, I'm going to address those questions to the extent that I can, to the extent that's possible. So what I'm going to need from you guys in the meantime is to be sure to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to subscribe to the channel so we can make this a happy thing, because the thing I want to avoid is the whole, trying to book guests and all that type of stuff. Yes, I will have some podcasts that's going to be separate from the live chat. I'm going to have those podcasts that's going to be pre-recorded with guests, but I think the most important thing is engagement with you all, because you all drive the conversation. So why not us craft what our plan is going forward. So that's how we're going to do it. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be really important for you guys to subscribe. So, you can have the forum to ask these questions and put your questions in or put your comments in or whatever. So yeah, we'll be super excited about that. But I did want to talk about two quick topics while I have you here. First I want to talk about is one of the things I've been seeing on Twitter all week, which has been, or all last week, I should say, which has been around the UTSA season tickets. And I only have a few bits on this I want to talk about. So I'm not going to act like I just understand the season ticket game like that. I just don't, quite frankly. But what I will say is the number, I think it was a bit over 8,500 or so, approaching 9,000. The number of season tickets sold seemed low to me, considering how much talent that we have with the program. I think we have a quarterback who's one of the best players in the nation, not the conference, in the nation. We have a coach who's one of the hottest commodities right now, and we got him locked up for a while, right? So we have all these great things. We're putting banners up. We're going into this new conference. You think that would create enough buzz to really drive up those season tickets? Because as I understand it, we have already sold more season tickets than we did in the year previous. But I think there's an expectation that the influx in tickets should be a bit more. And maybe it's still early too. We're just here, not even at mid-June yet, mid-July. But it just seems low. When I think about, and I live in Austin now, and I think about UT, they sold 68,000 season tickets already, completely sold out, right? In my mind, I'm like, we got to be able to do, we shouldn't be able to do what they're doing, obviously, because of the history. And I mean, it's UT, right? But considering the success, I would just think that we would be able to generate more than that already, right? Like, I I think we should have a safe 25,000 at the Alamo Dome every game. That should be safe. And I feel like some of those times we don't. That's kind of it can be wishy washy depending on the opponent and things like that, and depending on the week or the day of the game. That that kind of bothers me a little bit that we haven't solved the fan problem, considering that the only people we're not competing. We don't have there's not a football team in San Antonio, not a professional football team in San Antonio. So like we should really be driving things home. So and when I say professional, I mean NFL. I think there's an XFL thing or whatever, but we should, be packing the dome. It's basically what I'm trying to say in a nutshell. And the season tickets at its current state does not ensure that the dome will be packed. And I think it's about time that we start having the expectation around that, because too much of this stuff is going to start impacting other areas of the program. And I think sometimes fan bases lose sight on how much influence they have on team success. And what I mean by that is, a fan base packing out the stadium is going to drive in more recruits, because recruits and kids coming up, they want to play in front of thousands of people, right? And they almost want it to be a foregone conclusion that week in and week out they're going to be playing in big time football games with a lot of eyes watching, right? Especially a team that has been good in recent years. And when you think about the teams that we are starting to compete with in terms of recruits, we're going to lose the battle in some of those cases because we won't be able to compete with what they're putting in the seats, right? Our level is starting to rise, and we're starting to be looked at as teams. Like, for example, now I was doing this like flag football thing this past weekend, and it was a guy I met from Massachusetts, from Boston. And we were just talking, and we were talking about football. He asked me where I went to school from, and I said UTSA. And he just got here. And he was like, "Oh yeah, that team is good." And he was talking about knowing who we were while he was in Massachusetts, knowing the UTSA name already. He named Frank Harris, right? That's not something you could say five plus years ago. That I was still meeting new coworkers who lived in Texas who didn't even realize we were a Division I team, and that was 5 years ago, right? So anyway, I think that with the success that we've been having and the notoriety that the school has, like, I don't think it's necessarily one person's fault, but, and I'm talking about the AD here, I don't think it's her fault solely, but you got to think about it. I'm sure she's great. I've met her. She was very nice at the time I met her, and she's been very gracious to the alumni and things like that. At the end of the day, she makes a lot of money, and the expectation, part of her job is to make sure butts are in seats and people are coming in. And it's one of those things when you're the leader of something. It's just like when you see head coaches get fired in football all the time, right? It could be their defensive coordinator that's making a mistake, or their offensive coordinator that's making a mistake. They could have everything wrapped up perfectly, but that defensive coordinator is the reason they're giving up, 40 points a game, right? Well, guess what happens? Ultimately, it falls back on you as the leader, or it falls back on that head coach. So I know there was a lot of blowback on the AD, and there was just a lot of debate on like how she's doing and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, that's part of the job. It could be a bad marketing team or a bad sales team. Well, it's her job to replace them. It's her job to, so I don't want to come on here and blame one person, because I even think us who are doing all these podcasts need to shed more light on this and need to kind of aid in support of the team in terms of encouraging people who are fans to go out, support, go out to the games and go do some of those things, and just make it a environment that can continue to evolve and grow. Because what you see in some of these programs, they have these peaks and then they drop down into these valleys really, really quick. And it can happen in the snap of a finger if one or two things go wrong, right? So, especially whenever you think about the NIL money and those type of things and this new environment that we're operating in, we need to make sure we shear things up so we can keep this wealth of talent that we got, because we have a coach that's going to win if he has the talent to do so. So anyway, that's my little spiel on that. And then I want to quickly talk about the expectations that's been put on the team, UTSA, as they enter their first year into the AAC. For whatever reason, I am a bit worried about that, because I think it's great that we have expectation now, because we have a team that's used to winning. We have a coach that's used to winning. We have a coach with a winning mentality. We have a team with good leaders, and they've done so much over these last few years that now there's an expectation. Now people aren't going to be surprised. They're going to see you coming. So we're going to get everybody's best shot. Going to be a huge target on UTSA's back. And I think with that, it just increases the pressure on the players. The players listen to podcasts like this, believe it or not. The players are on Twitter. They're hearing and seeing and absorbing the support, but also understand that there's expectations that comes along with that. And all I'll just say with that is I'm very confident too. I've seen a thing of like we're projected to win the conference. We have the best offensive players, with the receiving core, with Frank Harris. We have all these good things. And I just want to for whatever reason, I'm taking the approach of like, let's just try to be humble to the extent that we can, because one injury could screw things up. One, bad game can screw things up whenever you talk about, winning conference or something like that. Like, I just want to be clear that, like, if let's say we didn't win the conference but still had a uber successful season and a great record, like the guys should still be celebrated and still be held high because they were able to do that. And it's so hard to go out and have these seasons to put up banners. We never did it whenever I was there. And I know though it's a tall task for all those guys to do that, and to be doing that in a way, in a repeat way, right? Like, that's insanely hard. And to think about going into a new conference and doing that's going to be insanely hard. So I'm super confident in us too, but like I am trying to hold the reins back a bit and let these guys build into the season and go out there and put another banner up. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Once again, as I sum this up, it's going to be uber important for you guys to like and subscribe, or really, I don't even care if you don't like the video. Be sure to subscribe, so whenever we get the live chats going, as we approach the season, we can have a ton of interaction, and we can, interact as a community, watch these games together, and talk about it on Sunday morning. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and peace. Talk to you soon.